All right, we're going to get started now. Welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar, Making PLT Relevant in a State with Few Trees. In a few minutes, Beth Hill from North Dakota will be presenting for us today. But before we start our presentation, I'd like to start with our territorial acknowledgement. The Sustainable Forestry Initiative's diverse team of staff and consultants live and work on the ancestral territories of many Indigenous nations, including from our offices on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people in what is now Ottawa, Ontario, and of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway peoples in present-day Washington, D.C. We are committed to building forest-focused collaborations that recognize and respect Indigenous peoples' rights, traditional knowledge, relationships with the land, enduring leadership in forest stewardship, and responsibilities to future generations. With that, I'd like to welcome Beth Hill from North Dakota. Beth, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I am the Outreach and Education Manager for the North Dakota Forest Service, and I also serve as North Dakota's PLT Coordinator. If you want to go on to the next slide. Today's webinar goals, we're going to identify some different avenues for marketing environmental ed in your own respective spaces, and then discuss which tactics we will consider for use in your own state. You can go to the next slide. So I want to welcome you all to my world. Welcome to North Dakota. We are 50th in the nation for forested lands. We are in last place. I had actually been using the 49th because I, for some reason, thought we had more trees than Nebraska, but we do not. We even have less trees than Rhode Island, which is the strongest or the smallest state we have in our whole union. But so when we think about a very unforested state, sometimes forestry and even environmental education I get met with, why are you guys teaching us about that? Why is it important? And so we've had to kind of explore some different avenues for marketing ourselves. If you want to go on to the next slide, please, Mary. I'll show you guys a little landscape view of our forest resources in North Dakota. If you want to look at what 50th in the nation for forested land looks like, this is it. You can see that we have those green patches on our state. That is our forest lands, our forests and our woodlands. And then the blue is the water. You'll notice that a lot of the blue, or a lot of the green occurs near the blue. But we run into some inherent issues with growing trees here, just due to our topography, our soils, and our climate. They really promote the growth of perennial grasses and forbs, and this limits the natural succession to forest land. And so oftentimes when you think of North Dakota, you don't think of forests, you think of agriculture and prairies, and our state is very beautiful. But we do have some very unique and very important forest resources that I do still highlight because I think it's important that people get to recognize the beauty of our state and the impact that our forest resources have, even though they may be small, they are mighty. And so when we look at our native forests in our state, those include our upland and our riparian forest, or our trees that occur near our water systems. They encompass about 815,000 acres. That amounts to about 1.8% of North Dakota's total land area. And we see both eastern deciduous forest types and western coniferous forest types, both in the state. And so we like to say that we are where the East meets the West, and that again can bring in some interesting discussion points when talking to students or even the general public about the value of forests. If you go on to the next slide, please. So, how do I make this relevant? How do we connect students to forestry and environmental ed when we live in a state where we don't have a big forest industry, we don't have big forest companies that are wanting to give us money. And so, how do we make ourselves relevant? I'll have you click next. We take the concept of forestry and environmental ed and we make it relevant, we make it personal, and we really try to keep it place-based in our state. So really just highlight the value that these forests do have. So if you go to the next slide. And the first thing that I do is I like to highlight our unique resources. And so when we think about the trees that we have in North Dakota, riparian trees and riparian forests are the trees that are found along our water bodies, particularly our rivers. And it comes as no surprise that this is the most common type of forest found in North Dakota. You think about the needs of a tree. They need sun, they need soil, air, and water. And that last one is probably the hardest one to come by in North Dakota just due to our climate and topography. So it naturally makes sense that where we find water, we can find trees. You can even see this illustrated on the map that I showed earlier. You follow the blue and you will find the trees following closely alongside that. However, these trees are invaluable to North Dakota's ecosystems and our quality of life as well. They provide critical wildlife habitat, making them essential for biodiversity. They protect water quality by filtering agricultural runoff. They reduce soil erosion. They offer wonderful recreational opportunities. Pictured here, we have one of our state forests called Tetrot Woods State Forest, and has just beautiful hiking, and it's really like the fall color destination in North Dakota, in my opinion. And these types of forests help to mitigate spring flood impacts, which is something that many North Dakotans deal with almost every single year. A lot of our riparian forests have been converted to non-forest through agricultural and residential development, particularly on rivers in eastern North Dakota towards Minnesota. And there has been some research done, and approximately half of the original native riparian forest in eastern North Dakota has been lost. And these riparian forests are further impaired by damaging factors like overgrazing or hydrologic alterations, which gradually reduce the tree vigor and eliminate understory woody vegetation. These changes and conversions adjacent to these water resources have significant implications on the water quality, flood control, wildlife habitat, and recreation. And so we can highlight the value that these riparian forests have, not just to the communities in that area, but how does this directly affect our students? Do they like to go fishing? Do they like to go kayaking along the Red River? What kind of impacts would that have if the trees in that area were gone? The next forest resource that I highlight is our windbreaks. We also call these conservation tree plantings. And these are all the trees planted in farmyards, windbreaks, shelter belts, and our living snow fences. Protection from the wind is of high importance to people living on the prairie. North Dakota is very windy, if you've ever been here. And so a windbreak is like a fence of trees that are designed to break the force of that wind. And one form of windbreak is called a shelter belt. And these shelter belts consist of long rows of trees that provide shelter from the wind, but they also help control wind erosion and reduce water evaporation from soils on adjacent farmlands. And they supply cover for livestock. And so they have real world impacts on um, the livelihood of our farmers in our state. And snow fences specifically help keep snow from drifting onto roads and other places where they could cause problems. And these rows of trees and bushes that block the snow as living snow fences and shelter belts in general in North Dakota, we've been estimated that there are 1.5 million acres of rural plantings in the state. That's significantly more than the native forest land that we even have. And they've even said that the windbreaks in North Dakota, if they were set end to end, they would stretch for 55,000 miles. And someone told me that this row of trees would wrap around the earth more than 2 times. That's significant. That's a lot of trees. And so, even though they may not have occurred here naturally, they do have a place on the prairie and a value. And we are seeing windbreaks being taken out even more and more as they decline and reach the end of their lifespan after they were planted back in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl. And so we can relate that back to the students and their lived experiences. Do you live on a farm? Do you have a row of trees that block around your house? They really help to reduce heating and cooling costs. It helps to provide habitat for the wildlife you like to go hunt. And so really relating it back to their lived experiences as well. The next way we highlight our unique resources is community forests. In bigger states, they like to call them urban and community forests, but in North Dakota, you'd be hard pressed to find a place that a lot of people consider to be urban. So we like to call them community forests. And these include the boulevard trees, trees planted in cities and parks, and trees that occur naturally within city limits or public right of ways. And the management of these tree resources may fall under the responsibility of city foresters, public works departments, or community tree boards. These trees add value to our quality of life. They relieve stress, mitigate heat islands, increase property value, attract business, and more. And so these have real life impacts on the students or the people we are educating in every single city and town within North Dakota. And so we highlight this as well when we work with our students. And the last one is focusing on forest products. We may not have a large forest products industry, but we do have some unique ways that we contribute to forest products in North Dakota. One picture here is called Pride Dairy. It is a creamery essentially that is in Botno, North Dakota. And what is unique about them is they source all of their fruits and berries from local growers. And so that is something that we always love to highlight. This is their Juneberry ice cream featured. It is incredible. If you've never had it, I wish I could bring some down to Nebraska for you guys. But this is one way that a business in North Dakota is making money by utilizing forest products that have been grown here. And so we look at things like that, and we look at Christmas tree farms that are in North Dakota and local woodworkers. And I really like to highlight these forest products when I work with students as well. Go on to the next slide. There we go. I will draw attention to your local forest action plan. Each state has a framework of goals, opportunities, and challenges related to forestry. So if you're not familiar with your state's forest action plan, I encourage you to scan the QR code and look it up and see what kind of content is in there and how you can align your work with this. Collectively, forest action plans make up one big strategic plan for America's forests. With the 2008 Farm Bill, Congress tasked the states and territories with assessing the condition of trees and forests within their boundaries, regardless of ownership, and develop strategies to conserve working forest landscapes, protect forests from harm, and enhance public benefits for trees and forests. So this resulted in state forest action plans. They were completed in 2010, updated 5 years later, comprehensively revised in 2020, and now most states are in the process of putting out another revision for 2025. And this was done by all 59 states and territories in the United States. And these offer practical and comprehensive roadmaps for investing federal, state, local, and private resources where they can be most effective in achieving national conservation goals. And so whenever we are doing anything with our agency specifically, because we're the State Forest Service, this is a plan that our agency helped develop. But I really try to align everything I do with outreach and education with this plan. We're addressing challenges like the societal disconnect from forest and natural resources, using PLT as a way to do that, or addressing wildland fire as a challenge through fire prevention education program that we have as well. So if you've never seen your forest action plan, it is out there. You should learn more about it. It's a great tool. Next slide, please. And so one thing that I just found helped my program the longer that I've been in it is to basically market my program in a different way, because we live in North Dakota, the trees aren't a big thing, and so sometimes people are like, well, why are you teaching kids about trees? It's not, why don't you teach them about agriculture? And so I learned how to market myself a little bit. And I do communications for my agency, so I inherently do that a little bit more. But I kind of broke it down into general marketing step-by-steps where I started understanding my customers' needs. So researching what the customers want, and having been in this position for over 5 years and building my facilitator network and connections, I've been able to understand a bit more about the educational landscape in my state. And now I feel like I have a little bit better understanding of what my educators want and what they need. And this was one of the most intensive parts of my process, where it took a lot of time, a lot of conversations, a lot of partnerships and network building, but really kind of put us in a position where we can more effectively deliver PLT as a resource to our educators. And so the next step was creating value, and that's developing products and services that satisfy the needs that we identified. This part was super easy because it is exactly what PLT is. It's a high quality product that directly satisfies the needs of our educators. Then it went to communicating and promoting. That's utilizing different ways that we do this through advertising, social media, PR to reach those audiences. This takes many different avenues, not just the social media, but it included a lot of proposals that I submitted to various conferences in our state, both for non-formal and formal educators. It's directly going into schools and making those connections, doing some cold calls. Nobody likes to do that, but sometimes it requires a little bit of that. Really networking, writing articles for newsletters, and really just getting the word out about PLT. The distribution part, it's managing logistics to ensure that your product is available, aka do I have a team of trained facilitators who are able to go out and expand the reach of the PLT program through delivering workshops, presentations, or direct education to students. I've had 2 facilitator trainings now under my belt as a coordinator, and I am very proud of what the work of my facilitators have done and what they are continuing to do. And I would say that's probably one of the most essential facets of a successful PLT program is building up that team that can help you reach even more people, more educators, and thus more students across your state. And then looking at my goals, generating leads, increasing revenue, or building brand awareness, sometimes are goals with general marketing. But in our case, it looked more like engaging more educators in PLT and then becoming a trusted source for professional development in our state. You can go to the next slide. And so that looked at exploring some different alternative avenues and audiences. And this was our way that we learned how to market PLT, specifically meeting the needs of our identified audiences. So the first is probably the best way we market PLT in our state, and that's guising our environmental education as agriculture and conservation education. North Dakota is more of a conservative state, and so the term environmental ed doesn't quite land well with a lot of the educators we work with or the administrators as well. And so, what is important in our state, our economy, and to our citizens is agriculture. North Dakota has 31,600 farms and ranches, and they encompass 39.4 million acres. That's nearly 90% of North Dakota's land area. So, much bigger scale, much bigger impact. Ag is the leading industry in our state. It contributes more than $18 billion to our economy, with our state leading the nation in producing crops like canola, flaxseed, honey, and various dry beans. Going hand in hand with agriculture is conservation. Many farmers in our state value our valuable resources, focusing on ways to maximize production while minimizing their impact on the land. So this looks at resource concerns like erosion, water quality, soil health, and invasive species. All conservation topics that we can easily make relevant and personal to our students with real life examples. This avenue pairs very well with PLT, as environmental ed isn't just exploring trees, while they do help with a number of those resource concerns. For example, trees planted in windbreaks offer shelter for wildlife, they reduce wind erosion, increase crop production, reduce heating and cooling costs around homesteads, and even offer pollinator habitat and value-added products to a farm like berries or nuts. So we can adapt this to urban areas and look at gardening or community forest or habitats as well. PLT's flexibility really allows us to easily address topics in conservation, making learning very place-based and relevant to the students that we teach, especially in the rural areas of North Dakota. So this avenue has allowed us to connect with a lot of non-formal programs for education, like partnering with Extension, 4-H, FFA, and our local conservation districts, showing that PLT's resources align directly with their education programs and missions based in ag and natural resources. Next slide. We have this priority emerged out of a recent facilitator training that I had, where many of the facilitators in training were university professors working with pre-service education students. They emphasized how anxious or reluctant that the students that they were teaching were to teach science, whether this is due to a lack of confidence in their own scientific knowledge, a fear of not knowing the answers to their students' questions, perhaps, or even just the limited training in science pedagogy that they receive, especially at the elementary or preschool level. It's really become a focus of mine this year to build up that confidence in our teachers teaching science. And science is complex. I don't blame people that are a little bit intimidated by it. It's multifaceted, but the most important characteristics of science are very straightforward. Science is a way of learning about the natural world, how it works, and how the natural world got to be the way that it is. It's not just a collection of facts, rather, it's a path to understanding. And I think that might be the first roadblock that we have in teachers being a little hesitant to teach science. All science relies on testing ideas by figuring out what expectations are generated by an idea and making observations to find out whether those expectations hold true. And accepted scientific ideas are reliable because they've been subjected to rigorous testing. But as new evidence is acquired and new perspectives emerge, these ideas can be revised. So this has caused me to really begin delving into the next generation science standards more and really leaning on my facilitators who have this background and expertise. I come from a natural resources background, and so standards were a whole new thing to me. And I'm very lucky that my sister is a trained facilitator for PLT, and she trained in college in secondary science education. And now she works as a science education specialist with our local science center. So I have had many conversations with her about this. I'm like, explain this to me like I'm 5. And she's like, I would love to. Because she just has that passion and understands the value of how those standards were built and why they're important and what impact they have on our students and their everyday lives. So, one focus that she had was to better understand and communicate the value of cross cutting concepts. These are 7 fundamental themes in the NGSS that bridge disciplinary boundaries, enabling our students to connect knowledge across science and engineering. These concepts show that subjects that students learn are not siloed and instead work closely together. The importance of these cross-cutting concepts is truly developing career-ready students and informed citizens. If these subjects are not integrated together, they won't be able to do their work effectively. And these concepts also provide a lens for analyzing phenomena, which is another important aspect of the NGSS. Phenomena are things that students are already experiencing in the world around them, observable and repeatable things that they can observe and investigate in their everyday lives. So by integrating these cross-cutting concepts and the phenomena, this creates an effective whole learning approach, which leads to better problem solving and critical thinking skills in our students. And by highlighting how interdisciplinary these subjects are, we can show educators that science really isn't all that scary. And PLT does an excellent job of doing this as a resource. And the teachers are directly helping their students become better thinkers, decision makers, and ultimately informed citizens who make responsible action. And the focus on building STEM skills, or as my sister likes to say instead, she likes to say STEM plus C, and that C being creativity, it really goes hand in hand. So showing that STEM isn't just for scientists or engineers, skills like creativity, communication, investigation, these are all skills that really transcend any job or career and expand even further than that and contributing to our students being educated citizens in the world. Next one. So another avenue we've looked at, we found a lot of success in showing that building career pathways that directly benefit North Dakota industries and their economy have been very well received. The term green job may come with some inherent bias when talking to teachers or administrators, but when using green job directly to students, it produces a different effect. So that was something that I had to kind of learn as I went. I will say that I do bring a copy of the Green Jobs personality quiz with me to almost every interaction with students middle school and on. And it is a wonderful hands-on way that they can learn about themselves and connect to realistic career pathways. This has opened a lot of doors with groups like our career counselors, early college instructors, our CTE programs, which is very big in North Dakota right now, and secondary classrooms as well. And one way that I've done this very effectively is by sharing my own career path. I like to show students the diversity of job opportunities available to them, even in our own state here in North Dakota or in your state back at home. And this makes it personal and conversational too. And it's not just me talking about a job. I have real world experience that I can speak to. And we do the same with the staff in my agency. I love to bring the wildland firefighters with me because it's like They have so many questions for them, and it's a job that they could do very realistically here in the state, whether it's for a career as or as a volunteer. And I always like to emphasize how it's okay to change the direction that you thought your career may go. Personally, I have a passion for highlighting women in traditionally male-dominated careers, including forestry and ag and natural resources. So sharing my own story can help inspire the new generation of women in green jobs. And I also love to utilize other resources like the National Enquirer's career cards. Those feature a number of women in green jobs too. So a lot of different resources that we've used that connect directly to career pathways. And many of the secondary lessons from PLT do have an element of community involvement to them, which easily translates to service and stewardship. So this is another aspect that we do like to highlight in addition to career pathways when working with students and educators, especially some of those in the more non-formal learning groups like the Scouts or 4-H. All right. Then my last alternative avenue and audience is a passion of mine, and that is early childhood. I wanted to kind of touch on each of the different avenues that we've kind of explored and offer some tangible ways that you can communicate with those audiences if you don't already do in your state. Oftentimes when we have learned in North Dakota that terminology is especially important when it comes to marketing to the right audience. I've mentioned that already a little bit. For example, nature-based learning or learning through play really resonates with the early childhood audiences that we have here in North Dakota. Social emotional learning, however, is generally a no-go, especially with the way that DEI is being criticized right now. So the research shows that just how much social emotional learning makes a difference, though. Many providers recognize that. And so instead, many providers are using the terms self-awareness and social awareness to highlight those benefits of managing emotions, empathy, and building positive relationships with our peers. Another buzzword we've had success with in promoting is sensory experiences. Learning through the senses is huge for this age group. So any way we can highlight how these activities activate those hands-on, full-body sensory learning is huge. And so I just want to thank PLT for creating such a wonderful document that has an entire activity set in Trees and Me focused on these topics. Being aware of where we live. In North Dakota, it's cold for much of the year. I'd say usually on an average year, it's 8 to 9 months, give or take. So our early childhood educators really appreciate learning how to bring the outdoors in. So in this section, this is a section that we cover in almost every early childhood workshop that we host. We like to provide concrete examples of how to do this effectively, like having a treasure shelf or hanging pictures of nature in their classroom, or even adding loose parts from nature into their sensory bins. They love to learn how to really incorporate the outdoors inside. And one audience that we found to be a perfect fit for PLT was Head Start. If you have never worked with Head Start before, I'd say definitely reach out to them. Head Start programs support our children's growth from birth through age 5 through services that support early learning and development, health, and family well-being. Head Start staff actively engage the parents, recognizing family participation through the program as key to strong childhood outcomes, and as does PLT. Many Head Start programs in our state emphasize the value of outdoor play and movement too, and a lot of them offer natural spaces to explore. So we know that PLT is aligned to the Head Start framework, but when you really delve into the specific standards of that framework, the more I realized how closely PLT aligns in addressing their goals in literacy, mathematics development, cognition, scientific reasoning, and perceptual, motor, and physical development very explicitly. So that was one opportunity that we were able to explore thanks to a session that we did at our early childhood learning conference in our state and really made some great connections with those programs in our state. And literacy is an important topic in early childhood where we're building the basis of reading and writing from the start, basically. And so we found many library programs foster summer programs or outreach activities for that early childhood age and have really raved about how much Trees and Me offers such easy activities to make reading fun. So another great audience and connection that we have made in our state. And the last one I wanted to highlight was a group that we just kind of happened to come upon that really became a interesting and kind of great partner. Health in all aspects is a topic that many early childhood educators value and emphasize. And with Trees and Me's health-based components, we found partnering with local community action agencies really offered a great opportunity to explore PLT in a way that we hadn't before. Community action agencies involve the community in assessing local needs and attacking the causes and conditions of poverty. The Southeastern North Dakota Community Action Agency, they're called CAA, invited us for a Trees and Me session at their annual conference, which invited childcare providers who enroll in their child adult care food program through the USDA. And this group emphasized health and gardening specifically through food. So we found this as a great opportunity to explore the snack components of Trees and Me, as well as the music and movement and dramatic play applications as well. Alrighty. I know that was a lot. Are there any questions in the chat that I need to address?
No questions yet.
Okay. Alrighty. So all in all, it's just essentially the marketing that we've had to change based on the audiences and the avenues that we're exploring, and just getting to know kind of the lay of the land in your state of those different marketing that you need to do. And so one thing that we're going to do next is something I do in almost every workshop that I have with specifically with non-formal educators, but even some of our regular educators too. I like to ask what conservation topics are important in your local area. So what are some things that you are facing? What are some things that you've read about in the news? And I like to use what's called Slido. It's one of many poll related applications. So if you scan that QR code, you should be able to add in your own input based on your state. So what are some conservation topics that are important in your local area? Wildfire mitigation, wonderful. I'm going to add water quality. Ooh, Louise. You guys will be happy to know I'm doing a wildfire session at the PLT conference. That's a fire. Interesting. I guess I didn't check to see how many people we had participating. Ooh, deer diseases. Soil health. For those of you that don't know what WUI is, it's wildland urban interface. Native habitats and invasives. Definitely. Ooh, water quality got another hit. With Slido, you can utilize it to um, feature content in different ways. And so they have like word clouds, they have scrolling options. You can do like a multiple choice. Someone else I saw put urban forests, land conversion, drought, plant diversity. Wonderful. These are really great places to start. A couple people typing, I see. Schoolyard forests, invasive pests. Alrighty, these are all really great conservation topics that um, we are going to now go to the next part. I want you to take one of those topics that you input or another that comes to mind, and I want you to find a specific real world example on how to make it relevant and personal to your students. So for me, I put in water quality. One way that we make this very relevant and personal to our students is we look at the watershed that the students are located in. And in North Dakota, we're part of the Missouri River watershed, which ties into the Mississippi River, which goes down to the Gulf of Mexico. And so it's easy to talk about if we have runoff of this non-point source pollution or point source pollution right here in North Dakota, can that have implications down the watershed, down all the way to the Gulf of Mexico? Absolutely. And then you could tie in how we had seen eutrophication of the Gulf of Mexico back. I mean, I did a Envirothon presentation on that in I think it was 2010. And so it's a real world example that you can take your concept and make it relevant and personal to your students. This is one way that we really take it environmental ed or conservation ed, whatever you want to call it, and make it applicable to our students. Because they can always say, why am I learning about this? What impact does this have? And by making it relevant and personal to where they are and their lived experiences, you can have a greater impact. All right, someone had said there have been several close call grass fires in the Denver metro recently, and it shows the impact of drought. Absolutely. So this could be pulling up news articles. I know in North Dakota here, last spring and the previous fall, we had some of the most active wildfire season that we've ever had. And so some of those fires that they had to be aware of, and maybe even some of them experienced wildfire on their land and how that has impacted them and their land, their livelihood. You have to be sensitive about fire when it comes to those things, absolutely. But definitely ways that we can make it very relevant to our students. Anybody else have any input? See two people typing. My neighbors had a fire in their compost. It is so dry. Oof. It is so dry. Even up here. Invasive pests impacting canopy cover in our neighborhoods. That is wonderful. That is something that we do as well, specifically with emerald ash borer. It has just been discovered in a second location in North Dakota just about a month ago. And so we really like to take a look at their tree inventory and talk about your community here in Lisbon, North Dakota has 50% of their trees being green ash. What kind of impact will that have when EAB eventually gets to Lisbon? Or what are some ways that we can help spread the word about the impact of this and really have them think about ways to message their local community or city council or getting them involved in a service project with tree planting, things like that. Proper tree placement and spacing for fuel loads and urban interface. That's great. See a couple more people typing. We'll let them add their input, and then we'll go to the next slide. Planting trees in a community or schoolyard. Students learn firsthand how to care for the trees and the importance of trees. That is wonderful. That's hands-on experience that they will remember for the rest of their lives. Will go back to that schoolyard and they will see that tree and check on it. And oftentimes they'll give it a name, really make it personal to them. I love that. Spotted lanternfly that students see near the school to talk about invasive species. Oh, yes, that's great. Alrighty. I'll have you go to the next slide, Mary. Love the Adopt a Tree activity. It's a wonderful one. So this was just a slide that I had taken from a previous workshop that I had done where a lot of these are more North Dakota specific, but could definitely be translated to your specific audiences. A lot of times when we're looking at things like air quality, we've had wildfire smoke come down from Canada. And so it opens a discussion on why the wildfires are happening, where they are happening, what impact it has, even hundreds of miles away. Looking at erosion, the NRCS has a wonderful demonstration called the Rainfall Simulator. If you've ever seen it, it's quite powerful imagery with where you have this sprayer that will spray water back and forth over pans of different soil types. So you have like one that came from a conventionally tilled plot. You have one from a sustainably managed pasture. You have one from a cropping situation where you have cover crops and you rotate the crop every year. And it's really impactful to see how much water is running off and how much water is going into the soil. And really is a powerful visual, like I said. If you're looking at pollinators, this could include creating an on-site garden where they have a very active role in planting and caring for the plants, but also using foods that require pollination as a learning tool because what is it? One out of every three bites of food come from a pollinator. Don't quote me on that one. It just came off the top of my head. But it's a very large amount that pollinators have in our food supply. Or looking at climate change at rainfall intensity or frequency today versus 50 years ago. Looking at specific endangered species or invasive plants or insects that are being affected or affecting your specific ecosystems in your state. And then we all love the environmental justice tool. I think that's the correct link. It may or may not. But definitely that one is very powerful to see. Even in their own community, there may be some underserved or under or at-risk community members that could benefit from a tree planting or things like that. So definitely something to explore. All right, you can go to the next slide. This will be our last one. So after today's session, what are some alternative avenues or audiences that you will explore in your state? Kind of talked about what we had done in North Dakota. It may look different in your state, but maybe as you were listening to me talk about what we've encountered, maybe something came to mind where you had a group or idea that came to mind where you thought, "Hey, I think I should explore this further." Ooh, love that. Ooh, trying to figure out what that's supposed to say. Chip said, being from Iowa, using the ag idea. That's a great one. It's got a lot of traction in North Dakota. Absolutely. The library is wonderful. Develop alternative prompts, primarily urban forest, reframing focus activities environments. Mhm. Tree planting with a variety of schools. Wonderful. Anna in the chat had said, do you market the PD events using these locally relevant topics? Instead of having an EE workshop, do you market it as an ag education workshop? Ooh, that's a good question. We could do a better job of that, and I think that's something we'll be doing more going forward, having talked to in one of those PLT wet and wild conference calls that we have every month. Yeah, usually with the workshops that have amounted to those specific groups, it is somebody coming to us saying, I would like a workshop that focuses on soil conservation districts. And so then we will take what we know about that group and say, okay, they work a lot with soil, they plant trees, they do a lot of pollinator habitat, they do a lot of wildlife habitat. And so that helps us to develop the agenda based on activities that relate to what we understand their needs of the audience are. Did that answer your question? Yeah. But we have done some workshops that focus specifically on concepts. Like we did a triple workshop last year. We called it Wild About, what do we call it? Wild About Forest, Water, and People. And so it was very ag focused with the Forest, Water, and People resource, but also Aquatic Wild and the Project Wet resources too. We have one coming up this next summer called Wild About Wetlands. So coming into that, the educators know we're going to learn about wetlands. Do you usually have time in the workshop for teachers to brainstorm these local examples they can use with their students? I do that almost every session. Yeah, I make sure that we take time to have the educators think about what are some of these topics that the students are facing or that are relevant to know, and then making them relevant and personal to their specific students. Absolutely. Tara said that was supposed to say that I primarily work in the urban environment, so sometimes have to come up with alternative ideas for the PLT activities if they're focused more on the native forest. That's wonderful. Us too. Absolutely. All righty. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you all? If not, thank you for the time, and hopefully you got a few additional ideas that you can explore. You're welcome.
Beth, I want to thank you for this great presentation. It's really informative, and we want to thank you for doing this a couple weeks before the conference. So thank
Absolutely.
you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.